Oh, Miss Elvers, I'm all excited to see the Pets for Pet Day tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you. This is, oh, good. Oh, thank God we can see you.
Sometimes it takes a sec, I know. My computer's been acting up today, so I was hoping it wouldn't it wouldn't glitch right before our meeting started. I don't know.
Yes, no, good.
I can't use my headphones right now. My Bluetooth uninstalled itself. So I'm trying to figure that out.
That is stressful. Hey, this is looking good. Oh, I'm so happy. Okay, wonderful.
I know it looks functional. I see the little live streaming thing. You're rocking it. Oh, I see a little fluff in the background.
Yep, mascot.
There we go. I'm using my Mac today. How's everyone?
Doing all right.
Good.
Doing well.
Good. Cody's got to set up too, but boy, yeah, this is, I'm glad we have some experts in here because I'm like, wow, this is some technical terminology. Hey, Michelle, by the way, I sent out, okay, I finally just got the recap of last board meeting. Can you believe it? I'm so slacking. So, but I can't remember when, I don't know if any of you have that January closed meeting day.
One moment. I was double checking the last of the board meeting notes.
Oh, I'm like, why did I not write that down?
You know, I kind of lost track of the double checking the notes. I was working on stuff for conferences and I just,
Oh, I know. Okay, so let's see, we've got everyone there. Nice, okay. John, is that you with glasses?
Yeah, unfortunately. Would you rather have me look at if I do this and I can't see as well, once I wear them, it's kind of like, I don't want to wear them. My eyes will adjust, but then the fine print, I have to admit, I'm getting old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I've never wore glasses in my life either until this year.
Yes. Yeah. I wear contacts now. They're really helpful, actually. And now when you get the contacts, they have that blue film too. So I'm just waiting for Cody to set up here and then we'll get started.
So you were asking about the date of the MSA for the strategic plan?
No. The strategic plans I have. I'm talking about the closed meeting that for the January, both mid-year review and the climate. I don't know if we decided we weren't quite going to set it because we're going to roll it into something, or did we set a date? I don't have it.
So I have a special meeting time, 5 o'clock on January 25th.
Okay, that's right. Okay. I think we were like, oh no, we're going to be tired of each other on.
Right.
January.
We decided to make that in case we couldn't finish it at the
meeting,
if I recall.
5 p.m. All right, I'll include that in the. All right, so we'll get started as soon as Cody's up and running. We've got a quorum here. Hey, John, one thing, and also we've got to take Judy out and put Gina in as our voting person too. That's on the agenda incorrectly.
On the board agenda.
Yeah. Oh, well, on the roll call.
Right. Yep.
And then, all right. So we'll just got to remember that. I know you wrote that up, but I'll got to remember that next time.
And then also, yes, Annie, I'm looking at my notes for item G.
Yes.
Date for the closed meeting in January. We had said the goal is to have it, depending on the agenda, January 19th. If it looks like January 19th is going to be too packed to do it, then we said we might need to use January 25th.
Okay.
So contingent upon agenda.
Okay, sweet. So when you review the 4 officers, when you review my notes, my community board kind of wrap up of that, just either somebody stick it in or I'll stick it in. All right, we are ready to go. Hello, everybody. This is a special meeting of the board. And I'd like to, it's 6, I don't even know the time here. It is 6:04. Let's get started. I am going to read the mission and vision. Our mission is we provide accelerated curriculum in all subjects with an emphasis on math and science. Oh, Paula's here. I could have had Paula. Paula, I'll give you a break. Vision is to be an innovative, sustainable model of academic excellence that creates well-rounded, lifelong learners and global citizens. So at this time for this special meeting, I would like to go ahead and roll call members. Dan Ellingston,
Here.
Cody Schneid,
Here.
Michelle Kurkowski,
Here.
Tina Albers,
Here.
Adam Bartz,
Here.
Robert Kruger,
Here.
Jennifer Bartle,
Here.
Maggie Berggraf. I see Maggie.
Here, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. And Annie Cardenas. Great. We have everyone, of course. And then we have Paula here and John Garecki. And then can we also have an introduction of the other two gentlemen, please?
Sure, I can do that. So we have Bruce Sorensen, who is from Baird, and they are the underwriters for our bonds. And then we have Craig Kepler, who is the attorney that is working with the school in our interest for these bonds.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So everyone present, because I'm amazed. Our board rocks. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to motion the approval of this agenda, please?
I will move.
Okay. And anyone would like to second, please? Somebody second?
This is Dan. I can second.
Okay, so that's Gina Albers moving first, and then we have Dan Ellingston second. All right, we will move into the approval of the bond financial resolution. That's business item 14. Would somebody like to motion the approval of the bond financial resolutions, please?
This is Rob. I move.
Okay. Somebody
Cody
like,
will second.
perfect, Cody. Thank you so much. All right, so we will move in, and I'll be handing this over to John because he called the special meeting and well equipped to detail this.
So before we jump into the two resolutions that are before you, I thought it was important for the board to be informed of just what you're looking at as far as the bonds, the actual bonds themselves go. And that's part of the reason I invited Bruce and Craig to come in, because they are much more adept and have done this many more times than I have. I'm a novice with this. So they could kind of explain or answer any questions that you might have. Excuse me. So in layman's terms, basically, I sat today kind of trying to get prepped for this by both Craig and Bruce, and try to boil it down. Maybe do we want to boil down layman's terms, or would you like to go more in depth? I mean, the board needs to be as informed as they can be when they're going into this. If you want the layman's terms, then maybe I'll do it that way, and then you can ask specifics of both Craig and Bruce. But in layman's terms, the one document that I sent out, which is the cash defeasance, if I said that right, document, basically spells out what would happen through the course of the loan. And, the course of the bonds, I should say, not the loan. But probably the best way to think of this is we have these bonds that we're going to refinance, and I'm going to kind of use an analogy of a house, because that's probably what most people are used to. So you're refinancing your house. We're refinancing our bonds. Anytime you do a refinance, there's a period at the very beginning of your refinance where if you were to sell your house, in our case, sell the bonds or move and we want to call our bonds, then there's going to be a cost to that calling, because when you, in our case, we have a 5-year call, excuse me, which is really a short time for bonds. Typically, a call period for a bond is 8 or 10 years. And the bonds we're looking at actually had a 10-year call. And that's why we're looking at doing that, because we can save some money. So because we wanted the flexibility of, if we go through with this, the flexibility of having the capability to call these bonds in a shorter period of time than is normal, there's there is a period of time where if we call them before those 5 years are up, that it would cost us, so to speak, more money than we're saving. And if you want to know what time period that is, roughly right after the 3-year mark of having these new bonds, that's the break-even point, so to speak. And then every year after that, we're banking money. If you want to think of it in terms of how much, and Bruce or Craig, feel free to jump in, but the way I understood it is basically for every year up to that 3.5 or 3-year mark, we're saving about $150,000 a year, but if we were to call it, it would cost us $150,000 every 6 months. So if we called it, for example, in 2 years, we would still need to pay that difference of what we were saving and what we are actually needing to pay because we're calling the bond earlier than normal. So the closer we get to that 3-year mark, the less money it would cost us going. At the 3-year mark, we're roughly about even. Every year after that, then we're saving $150,000, probably the easiest way to think about it. So if we go to the 5-year mark, at 5 years, that penalty that you would have to pay is basically gone. So you're going to save after 5 years, roughly 5 times 150,000. Minus, I think there's a premium for having this in place. So if I think I've explained that probably as succinctly as I can as far as in terms of a house. So basically in 3.5 years, assuming we wouldn't move, this bond reissuance wouldn't cost us anything. And then we would save money from that point on.
If John, if you don't mind, this is Craig. I could jump in and maybe offer a slightly different perspective.
Sure.
So we had a conversation about this maybe a month or two ago, and the fundamental idea behind the financing is that interest rates right now are extremely low, and so if you refinance your bonds, you're going to save yourself a lot of money, about $150,000 a year, and that's the known piece. I'm aware that the school has been bandying about the generalized idea that in some way, at some point in the future, it might be attractive to get the school under one roof, and we've talked about that with Barrett, the underwriter, as well. But you don't know for sure whether that opportunity is going to come along or when it's going to come along. Whenever you borrow money in commercial financing, most of the time, there's some form of prepayment premium if you want to prepay the financing early. This is true whether it's a bank loan or whether it's bond financing or really any kind of commercial real estate financing. Lenders want to get the payment stream from the financing for some period of time, and they charge you a premium to prepay early. The word defeasance is in some of the documents here, but defeasance is just a fancy way for doing the math to calculate what the prepayment premium is. There's a lot of other ways, yield maintenance. There's a lot of other ways of calculating prepayment premiums depending on the financing. Here, the ability to prepay the debt without any premium starts at the end of 5 years. And so you have a 5-year period of time where if you find an opportunity to move the school to a single facility, one of the pieces of math you're going to have to do in terms of the cost of that move is whether there's a prepayment premium and whether the deal is affordable in light of that premium. The savings that you're going to enjoy is about $150,000 a year, and the prepayment premium is about $150,000 each 6 months. And so, as John said, that break-even point is somewhere around year 3 or 3.5. In other words, if you were to find yourself in a circumstance where you wanted to buy a facility and move the school, anytime after year 3.5, you're still to the good overall financially. And anytime before 3.5, you're a little bit to the red, depending on how far in advance, but it's not a big amount. And so my logic about the whole thing is geez, we know we can save money now. We don't have any idea in the future whether you're going to have an opportunity to move the school to a single facility or not. It's really hard to do that. One of the reasons it's so hard is because selling your existing facility is usually an insurmountable hurdle. I've helped a couple of schools through the process of moving over the years from an owned facility into another owned facility. And in each case, the stars really have to line up. I don't know if you guys are aware that for example, the Eagle Ridge facility, when they moved from their one facility in Eden Prairie to their new facility in Minnetonka, Main Street School of Performing Arts, which is now called PIM Arts, was itself looking to move from a facility that it was leasing. So they had a buyer lined up. But I've had plenty of other schools who own facilities who, found a good opportunity that they wanted to buy and wanted to move to, but couldn't because they can't sell their existing facility. That's usually the big hurdle for charter schools because they're so purpose built, and finding a buyer for a charter school facility is extremely difficult to do. In Woodbury, there's really only one other significant school, and that's Woodbury Leadership, and they're dug into their facility. They're not going to move from where they're at. So they're not going to be a buyer of your facility. And in any event, if you were going to sell your facility, you wouldn't want to sell it to a school that competes with you. You'd want to sell it to a programmatic school like a language immersion or something like that. And the chances of finding that buyer are slim to none. So to be perfectly honest, I think the likelihood that you're going to find a circumstance where you can buy a single facility and move the school and sell your facility is very, very low at any time in the near future. Nobody has a crystal ball, but what we do know, the known fact is that interest rates are low and you can save the school a lot of money right now by refinancing your debt. What you don't know is whether you're ever going to find a solution to your one roof issue. Just my 2 cents, having worked with dozens and dozens and dozens of schools, is that part of the alchemy that makes a school successful, and math and science has without question been extremely successful, is parent happiness with your location. It fits well with their commute patterns. It's easy to get to when they drive their kids in the winter. That piece works well for you where you're at, and there's no guarantee that it's going to work well somewhere else. And it's a subtle piece, but it impacts enrollment a lot more than you think. My feeling about that with your school is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Looking at your school as an outsider, if it was me planning your future, I would suggest you build an addition between the two buildings, 2 or 3 floors, add your classroom space there, get a hold of buildings C and D, knock them down and turn that into sports field space. I frankly think that's a good future for your school, just as an outside observer who's worked with a lot of schools on a lot of facility projects, because it keeps your location intact and that's successful. And even putting aside the financing piece, moving a school is expensive. There's the actual physical moving costs, there's the retooling your enrollment, there's all the things that associate with basically starting up all over again. You might remember KIPP years ago when they moved pretty far, almost died as a school. It took them years and years and years to get back up to speed. And that's the North Minneapolis school with the North Minneapolis student populations. Woodbury, I don't know. So I don't know, but that's my 2 cents about you. I think it makes sense to take advantage of what we know, which is you can save a lot of money now rather than bulking, because what you don't know, which is that maybe somehow the stars will align and you can move sooner than 3 years from now. Because again, keep in mind, if it's longer than 3 years from now, you're still going to be to the good financially, no matter what you do.
Okay, talk about that scenario of C and D. Say who we lease from is willing to sell it, whether we knock it down or remodel it or whatever the scenario is. Does any of this refinancing the bond at this point hurt that possibility?
No, there's additional bonds test. You're already under additional bonds testing anyways, because you have bonds on your existing facility. And whenever you want to expand an existing facility, that's borrowing more money. That's not refinancing debt. And so there's financial covenants you've got to meet and things of that nature, right? I think Bruce has actually given us some leniency on additional bonds in this particular financing for expansion of the facilities specifically that make it easier than your current bonds do, actually. Bruce can speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Greg. And I agree with everything Greg said. He's representing you and he's got your interests at heart. I'm representing basically the transaction. I'm here to do this financing for you guys, so I'm a little bit biased, and I don't get paid until this deal closes. So, but I've worked with a lot of schools, and that was one of the goals here is we're going to give you the shortest call that we can give out without eating up too much of the savings with the cost of the call. Because investors, as those guys said, investors are really looking for 30-year financings with a 10-year prepayment lockout. So that's what that call is. It's basically you can't prepay the bonds for 10 years. So we've shortened the call here to 5 years. That gives you as much flexibility as we can and reduces the cost of having to call those bonds early if you should have to or you would like to down the road. But the other thing that we're going to be able to do here is change some of those covenants, as Craig just said, and make it easier for you to do additional bonds if you guys choose to do an expansion and increase the enrollment in your school and you need a facility to do that. So the way we're doing that is it's going to require, it's a more lenient look back is what we call. So one of the tests you've got right now, you look back to see how much coverage you would have if you issued new debt. And then you also look forward based on your new enrollment. Here, we're only doing the look back on your existing debt, and your debts that we're actually giving you quite a bit of room there. We're reducing the debt service by about $150,000 a year on these bonds. So from about 630 down to, or 640 down to less than 500. So that's going to make that easier to make that test down the road. And then, we're also doing part of the thing that's also going to help out is that the savings that you're going to be banking will be deposited into the building company's capital improvement fund. And we're going to change the language slightly there to make it possible to spend some of that in planning for a new project. So we're going to give you a pot of money to help with that future planning if needed, or any other capital improvements to the facilities. And then make it easier to do that new debt down the road.
So I'm wondering, have they talked about in the expansion committee? Have you talked about expanding here at our property that we're at right now? I mean, I'm not sure if those are conversations that, have you talked about that at all?
Go ahead, John, if you want to, because the discussions that we've had so far, that I've been a part of, we've been talking more about other sites. But I don't know, John, if you want to talk about the current site.
Yeah, to be honest, we haven't ruled anything out because we haven't focused on any particular area. And a lot of that goes back to the strategic plan. And as we all know, the board is re-looking at the strategic plan because that is really going to drive some of what it is or what we do with the expansion. Because if we do add a component with distance learning, that obviously changes what we're going to do with the building and facilities and how much space we need. So we haven't ruled anything out as far as site-wise. There are, in talking with a number of people, there are options that we can do on site. So we haven't ruled that out. The one thing that we do have, as has been mentioned, is if we do go off campus to a different site and leave this site, we do have the issue of we do have to sell the buildings in order to do that. Speaking of as far as charter schools across the state go, there are very few charter schools that have literally moved their campus. Most of them have expanded on site, and at the expansion committee, we went and visited St. Croix Prep, and they basically have done that on their own site. They've expanded basically 3 times on that site.
I'll say 2 things.
Go ahead, Craig.
2 things about that. I've worked with a lot of schools that have moved at the end of a lease where they're leasing from a third-party landlord and they've been looking for a site. So that's one thing. And I can tell you from that process that moving a school is hard to do. It's not just about the physical piece of moving. It's also about convincing families that the new site is where they want their kids to be. Families tend to be very site specific. So that's one thing. I've only worked with 1 or 2 schools that owned a facility that were successful in selling the owned facility and moving. And in one case, we kind of prearranged the buyer already before they even sold, because the buyer was a charter school that itself was at the end of a lease from a third-party landlord that wanted to move. And it was a non-competitive school. It was a performing arts school, so it wasn't going to compete with the school that moved out of that facility. And so it's hard to do. And the reason it is because the school facilities are so purpose-built. So you either have to sell it to another charter school, which is rare because you have to find a school that itself is looking to move, that has the money and the wherewithal to get financing to buy it. Or you have to sell it to somebody who's going to repurpose the facility. And in that case, they're going to pay you way less than what you need to get from it, because they're going to back out of the purchase price the cost of gutting the building and turning into offices or retail or whatever it is they're going to use for. So that's one thing. Second thing is I visited personally your facility for the first time when it was still warm and sunny. And it leapt out to me. Just leapt out to me what a lovely, sublime, just the sublimely lovely location it is. And I can understand why families like your location. And I don't think you're going to replace that feeling, the nice big shade trees that you have and the setback from the road and the quietude. And the other thing that leapt out to me was that whole west side of your site is, it's not really useful for anything other than sticking a big building there with 3 floors of classrooms that can fill up with kids. And then that front piece of your site would look so beautiful as green space. It would just beautify the space even more. It's already lovely when you drive in with the trees and the curving roads. And if there were green space there to greet people, I don't know if you can picture the Blake School there in Hopkins with all of its fields in front of the school, but it would sort of be a replica of that at a slightly smaller scale. And so just as an amateur, who I work in real estate, not really into charter schools as well, and you become a fan of architecture and landscape design and things of that nature when you work in real estate as long as I have. And your site is just it really is a lovely site. You're just not going to replicate that somewhere else. And I'm sure it's a piece. It's, obviously you're an excellent school and your families like what they get from the school education-wise, but I'm sure they also feel happy and good when they drop their kids off at your site. It's lovely. Who wouldn't want their kid to be going to school there?
Well, I just have a question on just the financial part. We, Horton Orthodontists moved in and built there behind us because we couldn't, for some reason, I think it was $650,000. It was very expensive land. So true, we have a lovely site, but how, if we were to get building CB property, would that be, what kind of cost is associated with? If we couldn't get the blank land that Horton Orthodontist is on, how is that different than getting C and D at this point?
I can speak just briefly to that, Annie. The cost of that pad, just the bare land, was $750,000. The cost for us to buy building C, and we do have that written in our lease, it's $750,000. So basically, we could buy building C for the cost of just that bare land, and that's just the going rate of real estate in Woodbury, evidently.
Has the expansion of you all looked other like Cottage Grove? I know we had talked about other places, just kind of get a feel of what costs are other places, close, but not, within the district, 833.
And expansion wise, we haven't gotten to that point. As far as, there are some buildings up and I guess I don't want to derail the meeting of what we're here for to talk about expansion or anything. But that we haven't gotten to that process as far as looking at all the different sites and the cost, other than to know that building new is always more expensive than retrofitting a building.
Well, I just bring it up because of the 3-year thing, but go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
you're right. But I think it goes back to Craig's point, which is we have a lot of unknowns still with the expansion, and we have some knowns with this document right now. So it's kind of like, when you say 3 years, Craig, it's like that's about the timing that we're kind of thinking would be the earliest, in my opinion, because we're still forming what it is that we want, what our strategy is, what it is we want with expansion and everything. So I would be surprised if we have something in 2 years, because I don't think that that's realistic. So So I think 3 years, and even when you mentioned 3 years, we're going to have a penalty, but it will be a smaller amount than, let's say, if it was this next year or what have you. There's nothing that's going to happen this next year. So I feel like moving forward with the recommendation here is pretty sound because it's what we know right now. The rest of it is unknowns that we still have to sort out.
Yeah, nobody has a crystal ball as to what's going to happen in the future on availability of sites. What you do know, like you said, is you can save money in the short term, and if you get beyond that 3-year mark, you're to the good no matter what you do.
So I guess that's the first thing I wanted to do is make sure the board was aware of with this bond. If we move forward with the bonding, this is the scenario that we're walking into. So it's not free. There is some risk, although I think if you look at the possibility of us building before 3 years, it's pretty minimal. So the risk associated with moving forward with this bond deal is, I would say, fairly minimal, because I really don't think it's likely that we'll build within 3 years. More likely that we're going to build in 3+ years, and then at that point we're saving money. So fundamentally, before we move on to with the other documents, as a board, you have to decide, do you want to move forward with this or not? And if you do, then it's a matter of the resolutions are pretty straightforward, and I know Craig can talk to that. But I think as a board, you have to decide, do we want to move forward with this? If you don't, then we're pretty much done, because the bond deal is done if the board doesn't want to go forward.
As to the resolution itself, it's pretty plain vanilla. You guys have been around the block on bonding multiple times. You authorize your officers to go out and sign loan documents and borrow money for you. That's really what the resolution says. And as long as it's not over $10 million, and I put a 4.5% interest rate as a ceiling, then they do what it takes to get it done. And you trust your officers to do the job that they're charged to do. That's really the bottom line on the resolution. And again, you guys as the board have seen these resolutions before. It's not any different than the resolutions you've probably executed in the past. The one difference would be I did prepare a post-issuance resolution. There's post-issuance covenants that bond borrowers have to comply with in terms of public data that you post on Emma. In recent years, that's become more of a focus in the bond market, and so bond buyers like to see that schools have a resolution in place even before the bonds, where they basically say, "Yep, we're really going to do that. We're really going to post all the information we say we're going to post, and we're going to put somebody in charge and make sure it's happening." And I put together a little calendar for you once the bond documents are final, where I excerpt out the quarterly and annual and semi-annual data that you've got to post on Emma, and then we'll append that to the back of your resolution, and then you just put that in your board agenda on an annual basis to make sure that it gets done.
I just wanted to add real quick, from the finance perspective, looking over the school's finances, the penalties we may have to pay if we did it at year 2, they're inconvenient. They really hurt the budget, but none of them are bankruptable, I guess is the word I'd want to use. The risk, I think, is low enough that we'd be able to survive if something happened where we had to move in 2 years.
All right. Well, I guess, John, if you want a commitment, yes or no, before we continue, although we've talked a little bit about the resolutions, is there anyone highly opposed to this? Just to know. Okay. I'm not either. I mean, it did make me feel much better that we think, from the expansion committee, that perhaps 3 years would probably be about the time frame. So, all right. Well, I think we move forward then.
So you do have a motion, I think, to pass the resolution. So, yeah.
Right. So I have here the approval of the bond financial resolutions, right? That would be the motion. We've already entered into the discussion phase. So we already motioned into it. So now I would go ahead and take the vote at this point, wouldn't I not? Yeah, because we've already motioned it in. All right, we will take a vote. Dan Ellingston,
Yes.
Cody Schneip,
Yes.
Michelle Kurkowski,
Yes.
Gina Albers,
Yes.
Adam Bartz,
Yes.
Robert Kruger,
Yes.
Jennifer Bartle,
Yes.
Maggie Burgraff,
Yes.
Annie Cardenas. Yes. All right, that's all yeses and motion carries. All right. At this time, all we have left is the motion to adjourn. It is, I have here I go here. 6:33 to adjourn. So do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 6:33?
This is Maggie. I so move.
Do I have a second?
This is Adam. I'll second.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we will motion to adjourn and we roll call that, right? I didn't write my cheat notes. I usually have my pink cheat note. Gina knows because she practices with me. So we'll go ahead and roll call the motion to, I do roll call that, right, Gina? Why am I forgetting this? Okay, thank you. Dan Ellingston,
Yes.
Cody Schneip,
Yes.
Michelle Kurkowski,
Yes.
Gina Albers,
Yes.
Adam Bartz,
Yes.
Robert Kruger,
Yes.
Jennifer Bartle,
Yes.
Maggie Burgraff,
Yes.
Annie Cardenas, and we will adjourn the meeting at 6:34. That's the fastest board meeting I've been on so far. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig and Bruce. Thanks for showing up.
All right,
Have
thank
a good
you.
night, everybody.
Thank
John,
you.
Before you go,
Yeah.
really, I wanted to make sure that there was some of the financial terms that I wasn't familiar with. So if I just do a quick copy and paste of like the summary that you gave and that Mr. Kepler gave, would you be willing to look at it? Because I have a couple of things where I have a question. I didn't know if I heard it right or not.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Right
Yep.
term, and then the company, you know what I mean? Is it okay if I do that so that you can give me the right info?
Sure.
Sometimes I couldn't hear them.
Do you want that tonight yet?
No,
Or-
no, no. Can I send it to you in the morning?
Oh, yes, yeah. The reason I asked is my wife's birthday is happening, and I told her I'd be there as soon as I can.
No worries, no worries. I'll send it to you in the morning. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Bye.
great. Thank you. Good night.